Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie Puss in Boots: The Last Wish in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Friends, in today's video, the movie we're going to talk about is called Puss in Boots. The Last Wish will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie in today's video. I'm going to tell you. I'm also going to give you all the information on which OT platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production filming, post-production, budget, box office collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film's storyline, star-cast actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end, so let's start the video. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is a 2022 American animated adventure comedy film produced by DreamWorks Animation. The sequel to Puss in Boots 2011 and the sixth in the Shrek film series, the film was directed by Joel Crawford and written by Paul Fisher, Tommy Swerdlow, and Tom Wheeler. As with its predecessor, the film is based on the character introduced in Shrek 2, 2004, and inspired by the fairy tale. The film's voice cast includes Antonio Banderas and Salma Hayek reprising their respective roles as the titular character, and Kitty Softpaws, with Harvey Guillen, Florence Pugh, Olivia Colman, Ray Winstone, Samson Kayo, John Mulaney, Wagner Moura, Divine Joy Randolph, and Anthony Mendez joining the cast. The story follows Puss in Boots, who teams up with Kitty and Perito to find the last wish of the fallen wishing star to restore 8 of his 9 lives. They race against other fairy tale characters seeking the same treasure, while a sinister wolf hunts Puss himself. Planning for a sequel to Puss in Boots began in November 2012, but it languished in development hell until it was revived in November 2018. In February 2019, it was announced that the film would be helmed by Bob Persichetti, head of story of the first film and co-director of Sony Pictures Animation's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 2018. By March 2021, Crawford had replaced Persichetti as director. The story draws inspiration from spaghetti western films, with The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, 1966, cited as a particular influence. The film's style is inspired by Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. With new technology, the team was able to give the film a painterly style to resemble a fairy tale story, diverging from the visual style of previous installments in the Shrek franchise. Following delays due to a restructuring at DreamWorks, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish premiered at Lincoln Center in New York City on November 25, 2022, and was theatrically released in the United States on December 21st by Universal Pictures. It received positive reviews from critics, with praise for its animation, story, and vocal performances. The film was a commercial success, grossing $484 million worldwide on a production budget of $90 to $110 million and becoming the 10th highest grossing film of 2022. It was nominated for Best Animated Feature at the Academy Awards, the Golden Globes, the Critics' Choice Awards, and the British Academy Film Awards. Plot: many years after his adventures with Shrek, Puss in Boots subdues a giant while hosting a party in the town of Del Mar, but is subsequently crushed by a church bell. After Puss recovers, the town doctor advises Puss to retire because he has already lost 8 of his 9 lives. Puss initially refuses, but relents when he is wounded and disarmed while dueling a wolf at the local pub. Traumatized by the event, Puss follows the doctor's directions to the house of Mama Luna, an elderly cat lady, and buries his clothes. Months later, Puss meets an optimistic Chihuahua disguised as a cat, whom he calls Perito. Crime family Goldilocks and the 3 bears soon arrive at Luna's home, intending to hire Puss to help them steal a map displaying the location of the wishing star. They leave after finding his apparent grave, and Puss decides to find the star to wish for another 9 lives. Perito follows Puss to the factory lair of the corrupt pastry chef and magical artifact collector, Big Jack Horner, who intends to use the star to control all of the world's magic. While stealing the map from Horner, Puss encounters his resentful ex-fiancée, Kitty Softpaws, who intends to take the map for herself. Goldie, the bears, and Horner discover and chase the trio, and Puss briefly sees the wolf in the distance. They all end up in the dark forest, a pocket dimension that manifests illusions of travelers' memories. During the subsequent clash, Puss suffers a panic attack and flees after the wolf reappears, allowing Goldie to take the map from Kitty. After Perito finds Puss and calms him down, Puss confesses his fears and remorse for abandoning Kitty before their wedding. She overhears Puss and tells him that she did not attend the wedding either, believing he loved himself too much to love her. Reinvigorated, Puss and Kitty retrieve the map, while Goldie and the bears are distracted by a manifestation of their woodland cottage. While escaping from Goldie and the bears, Puss becomes trapped in a crystalline cave, where reflections of his past lives ridicule him for changing his outlook. The wolf arrives and reveals himself as Death, who is outraged by Puss's failure to value any of his lives and intends to take his final life personally. Horrified, Puss runs out of the cave towards the star, leaving Kitty and Perito behind. During an argument with Baby Bear, Goldie reveals she intends to wish for a human family. Though this hurts the bears' feelings, they still agree to help her. Puss arrives at the star and begins to make his wish, but Kitty arrives, berates him for his selfishness, and reveals she would have wished for someone she could trust. Goldie, the bears, and Horner arrive, and a fight ensues for the map. Goldie briefly obtains it but abandons it to save Baby Bear, while Kitty traps Horner inside his magical bottomless bag. Death arrives and challenges Puss to a duel. Having learned the value of life from his time with his companions, Puss forgoes wishing for more lives and accepts temporarily disarming Death. Puss declares that while he can never truly defeat Death, he will never stop fighting for his last life. Realizing Puss is no longer arrogant, Death begrudgingly spares him and leaves, though he and Puss acknowledge that they will eventually meet again. Horner escapes the bag by eating a magic snack that transforms him into a giant. Perito distracts him, allowing Puss, Kitty, and Goldie to destroy the map, which causes the wishing star to consume Horner and explode. Goldie affirms to the bears that they are her true family, and they decide to take over Horner's business. Puss rekindles his romance with Kitty. With Perito in tow, they steal a ship and head to the kingdom of Far, Far Away. Voice cast. Main article, list of Shrek franchise characters. Antonio Banderas as Puss in Boots, a swashbuckling anthropomorphic tabby cat fugitive from the law and a hero of San Ricardo who has lost 8 of his 9 lives. In Mama Luna's cat rescue, Mama Luna named him Pickles. Salma Hayek Pinot as Kitty Softpaws, an anthropomorphic street-savvy tuxedo cat who is Puss' ex-fiancé and seeks the wishing star to find somebody she can trust. Harvey Guillen as Perito, a friendly and naive anthropomorphic chihuahua who is initially disguised as one of Mama Luna's pet cats and wants to become a therapy dog. Florence Pugh as Goldilocks, known as Goldie, the leader of the Three Bears crime family. Kaylee Crawford as young Goldilocks. Olivia Colman as Mama Bear, an anthropomorphic grizzly bear who is Papa Bear's wife, Baby Bear's mother, and Goldilocks' adoptive mother. Ray Winstone as Papa Bear, Mama Bear's husband, Baby Bear's father, and Goldilocks' adoptive father. Samson Kayo as Baby Bear, Papa Bear and Mama Bear's son, and Goldilocks' adoptive brother. John Mulaney as Big Jack Horner, a feared pastry chef who plans to use the wishing star to gain control of all magic. He has collected various magical items, creatures, and people ever since being denied fairy tale fame by calling himself Little Jack Horner as a child. His group of henchman cooks is called the Baker's Dozen. An insane and psychopathic killer, he is an egomaniacal and megalomaniacal man who regularly kills his own men to further his goals. Wagner Moura as the Wolf Death, a white wolf who is initially presumed to be a bounty hunter before revealing his true identity to Puss, who he wants to personally kill as punishment for Puss wasting 8 of his 9 lives. He wields twin sickles that combine into a double-bladed glaive. Divine Joy Randolph as Mama Luna, an elderly cat lady who initially takes Puss in net. Anthony Mendez as the doctor who tells Puss to retire after informing him of his 8 deaths. Kevin McCann as the ethical bug, a parody of the talking cricket who attempts to act as Jack Horner's conscience, 11. As the film progresses, he loses his faith in Horner, eventually deeming him as horrible and an irredeemable monster. Bernardo de Paula as the Governor of Del Mar. Betsy Sodaro and Artemis Pebdani as Joe and Jan Serpent, twin criminal sisters who deliver the map of the wishing star to Horner. Conrad Vernon as Gingy. Cody Cameron as Pinocchio. Kaylee Alyssa Flanagan as Little Girl. Shrek and Donkey make non-speaking appearances in a brief flashback, as does Imelda from the first Puss in Boots. Analysis. The film's subject matter and thematic merit have been lauded, receiving critical praise and discourse. It depicts death as a living antagonist, chasing Puss for his final life. Puss does not defeat death by combat, however, but instead by learning to accept the inevitability of death, while making sure to live life to the fullest, and learning to let the people he loves have a part in his life. This metaphor has received critical evaluation and appraisal for its poignancy. Music. Main article, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish soundtrack. Haydor Pereira composed the film score, replacing Henry Jackman from the first film. Additionally, 3 original songs were made for the film by Carol G., Daniel Oviedo, Haydor Pereira, Paul Fisher, Dan Navarro, and Gabby Moreno. Carol G. performs La Vida es Una, co-written by herself and Daniel Oviedo, and released on December 8, 2022, while Haydor Pereira co-wrote 2 songs titled Fearless Hero, performed by Antonio Banderas, and co-written by Dan Navarro and Paul Fisher, and Por qué te vas, co-written with and performed by Gabby Moreno. The soundtrack was released on December 16, 2022 by Backlot Music, in addition to cover of The Doors' This Is the End, performed by Dan Navarro. Music from Shrek 2 was used in the film by Harry Gregson Williams from the tracks Obliged to Help and The End, Happily Ever After. Release. Theatrical. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish premiered at Lincoln Center in New York City on December 13, 2022, and was theatrically released on December 21, 2022. It was originally scheduled to be released on November 2, 2018, and later on December 21, 2018. Before it was removed from the release schedule altogether in January 2015 due to corporate restructuring and DreamWorks Animation's new policy to release 2 films a year. Upon the project's resurrection, it was given a release date of September 23, 2022, and March 2021, 19. But in April 2022, the release date was moved to its current December 21st date, taking over the release of Illumination's The Super Mario Bros. Movie. A one-day public screening occurred on November 26, 2022, in select theaters. The first 30 minutes of the film were shown at the Annecy International Animation Film Festival on June 14, 2022. Critics noted the darker tone of the movie when compared to its predecessor, and director Joel Crawford agreed with them, mentioning that Puss' fear of death is the engine that drives the movie. The film also debuted a new animated logo opening for DreamWorks Animation, showcasing characters from The Bad Guys, How to Train Your Dragon, Kung Fu Panda, The Boss Baby, Trolls, and Shrek, with a remastered rendition of the 2010 fanfare composed by Harry Gregson Williams, mixed with several notes from the 2019 fanfare composed by John Powell, produced by Suzanne Burgi from Abominable, and Kendall Cronkite from Trolls, served as the production designer. Reception. Box office. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish grossed $186 million in the United States and Canada and $298.2 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $484.3 million. It is the 10th highest grossing film of 2022. Deadline Hollywood calculated the film's net profit as $120.2 million, accounting for production budgets, marketing, talent participations, and other costs. Box office grosses and home media revenues placed it 8th on their list of 2022's most valuable blockbusters. By March 2023, it ultimately became a sleeper hit, which was attributed to positive feedback, word of mouth, and minimal competition from family films. In the United States and Canada, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish was projected to gross $25 to $30 million from 4,099 theaters over its 5-day opening weekend. The film made $3.2 million on its first day and $2.9 million on its second, with The Hollywood Reporter noting that Winter Storm Elliott and the threat of a triple-demic surge in COVID-19 and flu cases could affect the box office in the subsequent days. It went on to debut to $12.4 million in its opening weekend and an estimated total of $26.2 million over the 6 days, finishing second behind holdover Avatar: The Way of Water. Despite opening below projections, Universal's president of domestic distribution, Jim Orr, and box office analysts believed the film could make up ground in the coming weeks through word of mouth and schools being on holiday. In its second weekend, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish grew 35% from its debut weekend, grossing $16.8 million. Its third weekend, the film fell 19% with $13.5 million, which was the first non-holiday weekend in its run. The film made $14.5 million in its fourth weekend and $18.9 million over the 4-day Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, Friday, Monday, while also crossing the $100 million mark at the United States and Canadian box office. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish was the 10th highest grossing film of 2022 in the United States and Canada, and completed its domestic theatrical run on April 20th, 2023. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is as spry and light on its feet as its titular feline. The inherently alluring paradox of the swashbuckling kitty from the Shrek universe remains firmly in place 11 years after his first solo feature. He's a dashing adventurer, a charmer with the ladies, feared and renowned throughout the land, but he's also unbearably adorable as he laps up milk from a shot glass with his pinky, sandpapery tongue. As always, the charismatic and sensitive Antonio Banderas finds just the right tone in exploring this furry animated figure's suave and silly sides. The Last Wish expands the roster of ridiculously talented supporting players from the Oscar-nominated 2011 original Puss in Boots. Joining Banderas and his longtime friend and co-star Salma Hayek Pino are Florence Pugh, Olivia Colman, Ray Winstone, Divine Joy Randolph, and John Mulaney, among many others. They bring a surprising amount of substance to what might have been a purely playful endeavor. But of course, the fast-paced humor and elaborate visuals are the main draws of director Joel Crawford and co-director Januel Mercado's film. The film's aesthetics may rely too heavily on anime influences, especially during the action sequences, but the vibrant colors and rich textures are a delight. From the moss growing on a fearsome forest giant to the shiny silkiness of Puss's whiskers blowing in the wind, The Last Wish offers a variety of eye-popping details. And it frequently features dramatic shadows and subtle dissolves to transition from past to present or one scene to the next. The story begins with a debauched bacchanal featuring kegs filled with leche that's more convincing than the opening orgy in Babylon. Puss in Boots is naturally front and center, singing his heart out, partying it up, but eventually he must go on the run when he realizes that bounty hunter, the big bad wolf, Wagner Moura, is after him, and he's down to the last of his 9 lives. The zippy montage, revealing the many ways he's died, is packed with witty little asides. FYI for parents and caretakers of little kids, the big bad wolf is essentially the Grim Reaper. He's relentless and he's terrifying. Faking his death, Puss seeks shelter at a cramped cat refuge run by Randolph's sweetly doting Mama Luna. Watching the arrogant, preening feline struggle to assimilate into a mundane world of dry food and shared litter boxes is hilarious, and the angles through which we experience his reluctant transformation put us inside his head. But it's here that Puss meets an unlikely ally, a scruffy, crazy-eyed chihuahua pretending to be a cat because he has nowhere else to go. We come to know him as Perrito, and he's played with scene-stealing sweetness by Harvey Guillen, What We Do in the Shadows. In a stacked voice cast, Guillen's performance emerges as the unexpected highlight. Perrito's unflappable innocence and enthusiasm in the face of danger are infectious, but he also provides the film with some of its most deeply emotional moments. Again, the darker parts of The Last Wish may disturb young viewers. When Puss's former rival and flame Kitty Softpaws shows up, voiced once again with sarcastic, flirtatious charm by Hayek Pino, the three go on a mission to find the mythical wishing star to restore Puss's 9 lives. The magical map that takes them there suggests a wildly divergent and amusing variety of paths, depending on who's holding it, but they're not the only ones seeking the map and the power of the wishing star. Also on their tail are Goldilocks and the Three Bears, Pugh, Winston, Coleman, and Samson Cayo, who are now a bickering Cockney-voiced crime syndicate straight out of a Guy Ritchie movie. The idea of Winston and Coleman playing Pugh's parents in any format is irresistible, and we need more of this. And in the least developed supporting part, Mulaney plays the gluttonous gang boss, Big Jack Horner, a towering figure who collects rare, fairy tale objects like Cinderella's glass slipper and baby unicorn horns. After a roaring start, The Last Wish sags a bit in the midsection as it becomes clear that we're in for a pretty standard quest from this script by Paul Fisher, The Croods: A New Age, and Tommy Swerdlow, 2018's The Grinch. Of course, everyone's after everyone else, and they're all after the same thing, with some funny and frightening obstacles along the way. But the film also manages to convey messages of selflessness and teamwork in a way that doesn't feel heavy-handed or cloying, and the stellar voice performances and dazzling visuals keep things so engaging you won't need a laser pointer or a catnip-stuffed mouse toy to entertain you. Review: Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. This Shrek spin-off is a breezily entertaining DreamWorks animation that harnesses the familiar appeal of the self-aggrandizing feline Antonio Banderas while also adopting a distinctive and original graphic visual style. Directors Joel Crawford and Januel Mercado both worked on the Kung Fu Panda films, and it's perhaps this, plus the striking stylized action sequences of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, that informs the bold, peppy approach to Puss's gravity-defying daring-do. The plot is basic. Down to his final life, Puss sees an opportunity to restore the full nine with a magic wishing star. He's not the only one seeking it. Goldilocks and her Ursine crime syndicate are on his trail, as is the monstrous, big Jack Horner. And then there's Kitty Softpaws, Salma Hayek, and wannabe emotional support animal Perito the Chihuahua, Harvey Guillen. It helps that the writing is as sharp as Puss's claws. More than a decade after Shrek, prequel spin-off Puss in Boots, the flamboyant feline is up to his old tricks, but has yet to meet the computer-animated ogre whose party he's destined to crash in Shrek 2. As that series wore on, the Shrek franchise took on so many popular side characters that by the fourth outing, there was hardly room left to swing a cat. A knee-high hero who walks, talks, and swashbuckles upright, Puss was one of the few tagalongs rich enough to warrant his own origin story. Now director Joel Crawford, The Croods: A New Age, goes dark, bringing the fearless cat face to face with his own mortality. By forcing Puss to contemplate his priorities, the sequel more than justifies its own existence, while paving the way for how his path meets the big green guys. The stakes may be more serious this time around, but the film's every bit as amusing as you'd expect from the clever-as-ever team at DreamWorks Animation, which has had a bumpy few years, taking something of a back seat to Illumination over at Universal. Minions maven Chris Meledandri serves as executive producer here. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish marks DWA's best film since the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy, reflecting some of the lessons learned on that series, including the notion that cartoon characters get a lot more interesting if they're not immortal. Co-written by Paul Fisher and Tommy Swerdlow with charmingly Spanish-embellished dialogue throughout, this fairy tale-adjacent adventure opens with Puss losing his 8th life. This kitty's too cocky to realize it at first, but the town vet gives him a rough recap of his previous deaths, which makes for a hilarious for us and sobering for Puss montage of all the ways his grandiose ego, so perfectly captured by the Mask of Zorro star Antonio Banderas' voice work, has endangered him till now. Cartoon cats can stand all kinds of abuse. Just ask Tom after years of Jerry's violent shenanigans. But it's probably best not to test fate if standing in Puss's shoes, especially when pursued by a big bad wolf bounty hunter, as Wolf, Narcos boss Wagner Moura gives a terrifically menacing turn. Crawford stages Puss's first run-in with this Reaper like a scene straight out of a Sergio Leone movie, the way Frank Miller might have drawn it for one of his Daredevil comics. All strong poses, extreme angles, and high-contrast graphic effects. Composer Heitor Pereira delivers the Morricone-style music to match. After that dramatic showdown reduces Puss to a quivering scaredy cat, our hero scampers off to live with Mama Luna, Divine Joy Randolph, a self-described cat fancier whose feline-infested home always has room for one more stray. Desperate and humbled, Puss buries his cavalier hat, cape, and boots in the yard and tries to blend in, meeting a nameless mutt in kitty disguise among Mama Luna's 36 or so rescues. The movie keeps piling on characters as it goes, from Goldie, Florence Pugh, and the Three Bears crime family, to Good Boy Gone Bad Jack Horner, John Mulaney, until such time that the ensemble has swollen to Shrek-like levels. But don't fret, Mother Goose Reject Jack Horner makes for a lame villain. But as complicated as the plot gets, it's all grounded by characters with clearly defined desires, which makes sense since they're all seeking the same thing. A shooting star is landed in the dark forest, and whoever reaches it first is entitled to a wish. Puss wants his lives back. The others, including Puss's former paramour Kitty Softpaws, Salma Hayek Pinal, have equally compelling motives. Only Puss's mangy canine amigo, Harvey Guillen, seems content with what he's got, which you'd better believe is going to rub off on the others. Still, it takes a sharp script to do so in such a surprising way, and that's more than most tunes can wish for. The movie feels most inspired in its first half hour, when Puss gets shaken out of his comfort zone, which is accompanied by a huge shift in visual style for a DreamWorks tune. Eschewing traditional CG codes, production designer Nate Ragg aims for an expressionistic storybook feel, with no lines and a refreshing rejection of photorealistic detail. Instead of distracting us with how lifelike Puss's fur follicles look, the crew embraces a more painterly approach that still allows the virtual camera to ricochet through space during action sequences. That same dynamism was a signature of the earlier film, with its swooping rooftop chases, that looks infinitely better in this new style. It's alarming how quickly computer-animated tunes start to look dated. Most audiences won't pick up on it, but the character rigs are vastly improved here. In the Shrek movies, the shoulders so often looked weird, whereas this time around, humans and animals alike have a much greater and more convincing range of postures. Add to that the painterly upgrade, and Puss will have paved the way for an all-new aesthetic when the studio decides to give Shrek a reboot. The project initially carried the working title Puss in Boots 2: 9 Lives 40. Thieves officially announced on June 12, 2014. However, the development process proved more complex than anticipated. In March 2015, Banderas revealed that the script was undergoing significant restructuring, hinting at creative challenges that would ultimately define the project's prolonged development cycle. During this period, he also teased the possibility of Shrek appearing in the film, suggesting the sequel might serve as a bridge between the spin-off and main franchise. The project entered what industry insiders refer to as development hell when it was removed from DreamWorks Animation's release schedule in January 2015. This decision resulted from corporate restructuring and DreamWorks' new policy to release only 2 films annually instead of 3. The restructuring involved significant layoffs and a $290 million charge, effectively putting numerous projects on indefinite hold. The sequel remained dormant until November 2018, when Chris Melodendra, founder and CEO of Illumination, was brought aboard as executive producer for both Shrek 5 and Puss in Boots 2. Melodendra's involvement signaled renewed commitment to reviving the dormant franchises, bringing fresh creative energy and industry expertise to the projects. February 2019 marked a significant turning point when Bob Persetti was announced as the director. Persetti brought impressive credentials, having served as head of story on the original Puss in Boots, and co-directed Sony Pictures Animation's critically acclaimed Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 2018. His appointment suggested a more sophisticated visual approach given his experience with groundbreaking animation techniques. Latifah, producer of the first film, was confirmed to oversee development alongside Melodendra, ensuring continuity with the original's creative vision. By August 2020, the project had found its identity with the trademark title Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, approved in December. This title shift reflected the story's more mature thematic focus on mortality and legacy. Departing from the lighter tone suggested by the original 9 Lives 40 Thieves concept, March 2021 brought another major creative shakeup when Joel Crawford replaced Persetti as director. Crawford, who had successfully helmed DreamWorks, the crew to New Age 2020, brought valuable experience in managing large-scale animated productions. The transition included producer Mark Swift, editor James Ryan, and screenwriter Paul Fisher, returning from previous DreamWorks projects alongside Janu. Marcato joining as co-director. This creative team assembled specific expertise in character development, visual storytelling, and thematic depth that would prove crucial to the film's eventual success. The writing team expanded to include Tommy Swirlo and Tom Wheeler, bringing diverse perspectives to the screenplay. Their combined efforts focused on crafting a story that could honor the franchise's comedic legacy while exploring more mature themes appropriate for audiences who had grown up with the characters. The development team drew inspiration from classic fairy tales, particularly those by the Brothers Grimm, whose cautionary tales that took you somewhere dark to make you appreciate the light provided thematic guidance for Puss's journey. Crawford's vision for the film emphasized the importance of balancing the franchise's established humor with genuine emotional depth. He wanted to retain the edgy comedy that made Shrek 2001 successful while avoiding simple retreading of familiar ground. The director explicitly aimed to explore darker themes than previous franchise entries, using Puss's mortality as the central engine driving the narrative. This approach reflected the creative team's understanding that audiences had matured since the original films, allowing for more sophisticated storytelling. The story development process involved extensive research into spaghetti western films, particularly The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, 1966, which served as a primary influence on the film's plot structure and tonal balance. The team appreciated how these films managed to seamlessly transition between different emotional registers, from humor to tension to genuine pathos. This influence extended beyond surface-level homage, informing the film's approach to character development and thematic exploration. Character development focused extensively on Puss's psychological journey, moving beyond the surface-level bravado that defined his earlier appearances. Crawford wanted Puss to begin as a larger-than-life figure who gradually learns to embrace vulnerability, creating a genuine character arc rather than simple adventure plotting. The inclusion of a panic attack scene represented the team's commitment to authentic, emotional representation, with Crawford and storyboard artist Taylor Mitchum drawing from personal experiences to ensure accuracy and sensitivity. The development team paid particular attention to supporting characters, ensuring each served specific narrative functions while maintaining individual personality and motivation. Goldilocks and the Three Bears were reimagined as a crime family, providing both comedic potential and emotional depth through their family dynamics. The character of Death, personified as a wolf, emerged from the team's research into Brothers Grimm fairy tales, where wolves traditionally represented the personification of fear. This choice reflected the story's thematic focus on confronting mortality and finding meaning in finite existence. Pre-production involved extensive world building to create environments that could support both the fairy tale elements inherited from the Shrek franchise and the spaghetti western influences that define the new direction. The Dark Forest, designed as a pocket dimension, manifesting travelers' memories, represented the team's commitment to creating visually distinctive settings that served narrative purposes rather than mere spectacle. Each location was carefully crafted to reflect thematic elements while providing opportunities for both action and character development. The Voice casting process prioritized finding performers who could balance comedy with genuine emotional depth. The return of Antonio Banderas and Salmo Penault provided continuity with previous films while allowing for character growth. New additions like Harvey Gilleld, the copyright N, Florence Pugh, Olivia Colman, Ray Winstone, Samson Coe, John Melanie, and Wagner Moura were chosen for their ability to bring distinct personalities to ensemble characters while supporting the central themes. Wagner Moura's casting as Death proved particularly significant, as his performance needed to convey menace without becoming purely villainous, embodying the inevitability of mortality rather than simple antagonism. Filming as an animated film, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish didn't involve traditional filming, but rather an extensive animation production process that represented significant technological and artistic advancement for DreamWorks. Animation. The production timeline spans several years, with animation work beginning in earnest following Joel Crawford's appointment as director in March 2021 and continuing through the film's completion in 2022. The animation process began with extensive pre-visualization and storyboarding, crucial steps that established the visual language and pacing for the entire film. Crawford and his team developed the tailed animatics that served as blueprints for the final animation, allowing for precise timing and visual storytelling. These pre-visualization stages were particularly important given the film's ambitious visual goals and complex action sequences. Voice recording. Sessions represented a critical component of the production process, with Antonio Banderas reprising his iconic role as Puss, while new cast members brought their characters to life. The recording process involved multiple sessions over several months, with Crawford directing performances to ensure consistency with the film's tonal goals. Banderas' experience with the character allowed for natural evolution in his performance, capturing Puss's maturation, while maintaining the essential charm that defined the character. The technical animation process involved hundreds of artists working across multiple departments, including character animation, environmental design, effects, animation, and lighting. Each department contributed specialized expertise to create the film's distinctive visual style, which required careful coordination to maintain consistency across different pop sequences and environments. The complexity of the character designs, particularly the anthropomorphic animals, required sophisticated rigging and animation systems to achieve believable movement and expression. Character animation focused extensively on facial expressions and body language, crucial elements for conveying the story's emotional depth. Puss's panic attack scene required particularly careful animation work, with animators studying real behavioral patterns to ensure authentic representation. The animation team worked closely with Crawford and storyboard artists to capture subtle emotional beats that supported the narrative's thematic goals. Environmental animation created the diverse settings that support the story. From the festive town of Delmare to the mysterious dark forest, each environment required detailed modeling, texturing, and lighting to create believable spaces that could support both comedic and dramatic moments. The dark forest sequences proved particularly challenging, requiring animation techniques that could convincingly portray the manifestation of characters' memories and fears. Effects animation handled the numerous magical elements throughout the film, including the wishing star's power, Jack Horner's magical artifacts, and Death's supernatural abilities. These effects needed to feel integrated with the characters and environments rather than merely decorative, requiring careful attention to how magical elements interacted with practical story. Elements. The action sequences demanded extensive choreography and planning, with the opening giant battle and various chase scenes requiring precise timing and dynamic camera movement. These sequences balanced spectacular visual elements with character development, ensuring that action supported rather than overshadowed the story's emotional core. Color design played a crucial role in establishing the film's visual identity, with different sequences utilizing specific color palettes to support mood and thematic content. The warm, vibrant colors of the opening celebration contrasted sharply with the cooler, more muted tones during Puss's lowest emotional moments. While Death's appearances were accompanied by stark, high-contrast lighting that emphasized his otherworldly nature, the integration of different animation styles within individual sequences required careful, technical work to maintain visual coherence. The film's painterly approach, inspired by storybook illustrations, needed to function consistently across various lighting conditions and camera angles. This consistency required extensive technical development and testing to ensure the animation pipeline could support the artistic vision. Quality control throughout the animation process involved regular reviews and revisions, with Crawford and the creative team providing feedback on character performance, visual effects, and overall pacing. This iterative process allowed for continuous refinement of the animation work, ensuring that the final product met the high standards established during pre-production. Post-P-production for Puss in Boots. The Last Wish involved extensive work in multiple phases, transforming the raw animated sequences into a polished, cohesive final product. The post-production process began while animation work was still in progress, allowing for overlapping workflows that maximized efficiency and creative flexibility. Editorial work led by editor James Ryan involved assembling the animated sequences into a coherent narrative structure while maintaining optimal pacing for both comedic and dramatic moments. The editing process required careful attention to timing, ensuring that jokes landed effectively, while dramatic beats received appropriate emotional space. Ryan's previous experience with DreamWorks projects provided valuable insight into balancing the studio's trademark humor with the more mature themes Crawford wanted to explore. Sound design represented a crucial component of post-production, creating an audio landscape that supported both the fantasy elements and emotional depth of the story. The sound team developed distinctive audio signatures for each character, with Puss's movements reflecting his feline nature, while Death's presence was accompanied by ominous whistling and supernatural sound effects. Environmental audio created believable acoustic spaces, from the festive atmosphere of Del Mar to the eerie quiet of the dark forest. The film score, composed by Heitor Pereira, required extensive development to support the story's tonal shifts while maintaining musical coherence. Pereira replaced Henry Jackman from the first film, bringing a fresh musical perspective that could incorporate both the franchise's established musical themes and new compositions appropriate to the sequel's darker tone. The composer worked closely with Crawford to ensure that the music enhanced rather than overwhelmed the story's emotional beats. Pereira's score drew from multiple musical traditions, incorporating Latin influences appropriate to Puss's Spanish heritage alongside Western musical elements that supported the film. Spaghetti Western influences. The composer created distinctive musical themes for each major character, with Death's appearances marked by particularly haunting musical motifs that enhanced his supernatural menace, without becoming overly frightening for younger audiences. 3 original songs were created specifically for the film, representing collaborative efforts between multiple artists. Carol G. Slavasuna, co-written with Daniel Ovio, provided a contemporary musical element that connected this film to current popular culture while maintaining thematic relevance. The song was released as a single on December 8, 2022, helping to promote the film while establishing its cultural relevance. Antonio Banderas performed Fearless Hero, co-written by Heitor Pereira, Dan Navarro, and Paul Fisher, showcasing the actor's continued connection to the character while supporting the story's themes about heroism and vulnerability. Gabby Moreno's Por Que Te Vas, also co-written with Pereira, added emotional depth during key narrative moments. These original songs were integrated carefully into the narrative structure, supporting story beats rather than interrupting narrative flow. The Soundtrack also included a cover of The Doors' This Is the End, performed by Dan Navarro, providing a contemporary interpretation of classic song that reflected the film's themes about mortality and transformation. Additionally, music from Shrek 2, composed by Harry Gregson Williams, was incorporated from the tracks obliged to Help in the End Happily Ever After, creating musical continuity with the broader franchise while establishing the sequel's unique identity. Color correction and final visual polish involved extensive technical work to ensure visual consistency across all sequences, while optimizing the film's distinctive painterly style for theatrical presentation. The post-production team worked to maintain the storybook illustration aesthetic while ensuring that action sequences remain visually clear and emotionally impactful. This process required careful balance between artistic ambition and practical viewing requirements. Digital intermediate work handled the final color grading and technical preparation for various distribution formats, ensuring that the film would look consistent across different projection systems and home viewing platforms. The team needed to account for the varying capabilities of different theaters while maintaining the artistic integrity of the visual design. Quality assurance throughout post-production involved multiple review phases, with Crawford and the creative team evaluating each aspect of the final product. Test screenings provided valuable feedback about pacing, humor effectiveness, and emotional impact, allowing for final adjustments before the film's completion. The final mixing process combined all audio elements, including dialogue, sound effects, and music, into a cohesive soundtrack that supported the visual storytelling while meeting technical requirements for theatrical and home distribution. This process required careful attention to dynamic range, ensuring that quiet emotional moments remained audible, while action sequences provided appropriate impact without overwhelming dialogue. Music, the musical landscape of Puss in Boots. The Last Wish represented a significant evolution from previous entries in the Day franchise, reflecting both the story's mature themes and its expanded cultural influences. Her Pereira's appointment as composer marked a departure from Henry Jackman's work on the original film, bringing fresh musical perspectives that could support the sequel's more complex emotional journey while maintaining connection to the established franchise. Identity. Pereira's compositional approach drew from multiple musical traditions, creating a score that reflected both Puss's Spanish cultural heritage and the film's spaghetti western influences. The composer incorporated traditional Latin instrumentation alongside Western orchestral elements, creating a musical palette that could support both intimate character moments and spectacular action sequences. This musical fusion reflected the story's thematic focus on identity and belonging, with Puss's journey exploring questions about heritage, mortality, and personal growth. The score's thematic structure organized around several recurring musical motifs, each associated with major characters and concepts. Puss's main theme evolved throughout the film, beginning with the heroic, swaggering melody familiar from previous appearances, before developing into more complex arrangements that incorporated vulnerability and introspection. This musical character development paralleled Puss's emotional journey, with the instrumentation and harmonies reflecting his growing self-awareness and acceptance of mortality. Death's musical representation proved particularly significant to the film's success, with Pereira creating haunting motifs that enhanced the character's supernatural menace while avoiding purely villainous characterization. The composer utilized dissonant harmonies and unconventional instrumentation to create an otherworldly audio signature that signaled Death's presence even before his visual appearance. This musical approach supported the story's thematic treatment of mortality as a natural force rather than simple antagonism. The composer's collaboration with lyricists and performers on original songs created musical moments that served specific narrative functions while maintaining entertainment value. These songs were integrated carefully into the story structure, supporting character development, and thematic exploration, rather than merely providing musical interludes. Each song reflected careful consideration of its placement within the overall narrative arc, ensuring that musical moments enhanced rather than interrupted the storytelling flow. Fearless Hero, performed by Antonio Banderas, served multiple narrative functions beyond simple entertainment. The song established Puss's public persona at the film's beginning, while providing thematic contrast to his later vulnerability. Banderas' performance captured the character's trademark confidence, while hinting at underlying insecurities that would become central to the story's development. The collaboration between Pereira, Dan Navarro, and Paul Fisher created lyrics that function both as character expression and thematic foreshadowing. Karol G's Lava Sauna brought contemporary popular music sensibilities to the franchise while maintaining thematic relevance to the story's exploration of life's meaning and mortality. The song's bilingual lyrics reflected the film's cultural diversity while creating musical accessibility for different audience segments. Karol G's performance style brought energy and authenticity that connected this film to current popular culture without sacrificing the timeless qualities that define successful animated films. Gabby. Moreno's poor KT Vass provided emotional depth during key narrative moments, with her distinctive vocal style adding culture, authenticity, and emotional resonance. The song's placement within the story structure supported character relationship development while maintaining musical quality that could function independently of the film context. Moreno's collaboration with Pereira ensured that the song maintained musical coherence with the overall score while providing distinctive emotional coloring. The inclusion of Dan Navarro's cover of The Doors, "This Is the End," represented a sophisticated musical choice that connected classic rock sensibilities with the film's themes about mortality and transformation. Navarro's interpretation maintained the original song's emotional power while adapting the arrangement to fit the film's musical palette. This musical choice demonstrated the creative team's willingness to incorporate diverse influences while maintaining artistic coherence. The integration of music from Shrek 2 created deliberate connections to the broader franchise while establishing the sequel's unique musical identity. Harry Gregson Williams' tracks obliged to help in the end. Happily Ever After provided musical continuity that honored the franchise's legacy while supporting the new story's emotional needs. This musical recycling demonstrated careful attention to franchise coherence while avoiding simple repetition. The soundtrack's release on December 16, 2022 by Backlot Music provided audiences with access to the film's musical content while supporting promotional efforts. The soundtrack's commercial availability allowed fans to engage with the film's musical elements independently, extending the movie's cultural impact beyond theatrical presentation. The timing of the soundtrack release just before the film's theatrical debut created promotional opportunities while satisfying audience demand for musical content. Technical aspects of the musical production required extensive coordination between composers, performers, and the film's creative team. The recording process involved multiple sessions with various artists, requiring careful attention to vocal performance quality and instrumental arrangements. Pereira's role as both composer and collaborator required balancing individual artistic contributions with overall musical coherence, ensuring that different musical elements supported the unified creative vision. The score's orchestration utilized both traditional orchestral instrumentation and contemporary electronic elements, creating a musical palette that could support the film's visual style while maintaining emotional authenticity. The balance between acoustic and electronic instruments reflected the story's blend of traditional fairy tale elements with contemporary storytelling sensibilities, creating musical coherence that supported the film's thematic goals. Released theatrical. The theatrical release of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish followed a complex journey that reflected both industry challenges and strategic positioning within the competitive animated film landscape. The film's path to theaters involved multiple release date adjustments, strategic positioning decisions, and carefully orchestrated promotional campaigns designed to maximize audience engagement and commercial success. The premiere took place at Lincoln Center in New York City on November 25, 2022, providing an elegant launch platform that emphasized the film's cultural significance and artistic achievements. This prestigious venue choice reflected DreamWorks Animation's confidence in the project's quality while creating media attention that would support subsequent promotional efforts. The Lincoln Center premiere attracted industry, professionals, media representatives, and cultural figures, generating positive early coverage that would prove crucial to the film's eventual success. However, there appears to be some inconsistency in sources regarding the exact premiere date, with some indicating December 13, 2022 as the Lincoln Center premiere date. Regardless of the specific date, the New York premiere served its intended function of generating industry buzz and critical attention that supported the film's wider release strategy. The wide theatrical release occurred on December 21, 2022, strategically positioned during the lucrative Christmas holiday period when family audiences traditionally flock to theaters. This release timing reflected careful market analysis, taking advantage of school holidays and family gathering opportunities that drive animated film attendance. The December release date represented the culmination of strategic planning designed to maximize the film's commercial potential during one of the year's most profitable theatrical periods. The journey to this December release involved considerable schedule complexity, reflecting both creative development challenges and strategic market positioning decisions. The film was originally scheduled for release on November 2, 2018, an ambitious timeline that proved unrealistic given the project's development challenges. The date was subsequently moved to December 21, 2018, maintaining the holiday positioning while acknowledging production realities. However, the project was removed from the release schedule entirely in January 2015 due to DreamWorks Animation's corporate restructuring and new policy limiting annual releases to 2 films instead of 3. This removal placed the project in indefinite development limbo, where it remained for several years while the studio navigated financial challenges and strategic reorganization. Upon the project's resurrection under Chris Meledandri's involvement, it received a new release date of September 23, 2022. Announced in March 2021, this autumn positioning would have placed the film outside the traditional holiday animated film window, but potentially reduced competition from other major releases. However, in April 2022, the release date was moved to December 21, 2022, taking over the release slot originally planned for Illumination's The Super Mario Bros. Movie. This final date change reflected strategic decisions about market positioning and production readiness. The theatrical rollout included a special one-day public screening on November 26, 2022 in select theaters, providing early audience exposure that generated word-of-mouth promotion before the wide release. This preview strategy allowed the film to build audience enthusiasm while providing valuable feedback about audience reception that could inform final promotional strategies. Early audience presentations included the first 30 minutes screened at the Annecy International Animation Film Festival on June 14, 2022, where critics and industry professionals noted the film's darker tone compared to its predecessor. Director Joel Crawford's acknowledgement that Puss's fear of death is the engine that drives the movie at this presentation provided insight into the creative team's thematic goals while generating critical discussion about the franchise's evolution. The film's theatrical presentation included technical innovations that enhanced the viewing experience, including a new animated logo opening for DreamWorks Animation, This updated logo featured characters from multiple franchise properties, including The Bad Guys, How to Train Your Dragon, Kung Fu Panda, The Boss Baby, Trolls, and Shrek, accompanied by a remastered fanfare combining Harry Gregson Williams' 2010 composition with elements from John Powell's 2019 fanfare. This logo update positioned The Last Wish as part of DreamWorks' broader creative renaissance while honoring the studio's history. Theater distribution encompassed 4,099 theaters for the opening weekend, ensuring wide availability across different market segments while maximizing potential box office performance. This broad distribution strategy reflected confidence in the film's commercial appeal while acknowledging the competitive holiday marketplace that required strong initial positioning to achieve success. The theatrical release strategy included various promotional partnerships and marketing campaigns designed to reach different audience segments. These efforts combine traditional advertising approaches with contemporary digital marketing strategies, utilizing social media platforms and online content to engage with audiences who had grown up with the franchise while attracting new viewers unfamiliar with previous entries. Critical reception during the initial theatrical run proved overwhelmingly positive, with praise focusing on the animation quality, story depth, and voice performances. This critical success supported the film's theatrical performance while establishing credibility that would prove valuable for subsequent release phases and potential franchise development. The theatrical run extended through April 20th, 2023, when the film completed its domestic theatrical presentation. During this period, the film demonstrated remarkable staying power with box office performance improving over several weekends rather than following the typical pattern of declining attendance. This unusual performance trajectory reflected positive word of mouth and critical reception that sustained audience interest well beyond the initial release period. The home media release strategy for Puss in Boots. The Last Wish demonstrated the evolving landscape of content distribution in the contemporary entertainment industry, with multiple release formats and platforms designed to maximize audience access while supporting long-term commercial success. The comprehensive home media approach included digital releases, physical media formats, and streaming platform availability, each serving different audience preferences and consumption patterns. Digital release occurred on January 6, 2023, just 16 days after the film's theatrical debut, representing an aggressively shortened theatrical window that reflected changing industry practices and consumer expectations. This rapid digital availability acknowledged contemporary audience preferences for home viewing while capitalizing on the momentum generated by positive theatrical reception. The quick digital release also reflected strategic positioning to capture audience interest during the continued holiday period when family entertainment consumption typically peaks. The digital release included various purchase and rental options across multiple platforms, ensuring accessibility for different consumer preferences and spending patterns. Premium video on-demand availability allowed early adopters to access the film at home while supporting continued theatrical runs in markets where the film remained popular. This multi-platform approach maximized revenue potential while providing consumer flexibility that had become essential in the post-pandemic entertainment landscape. Physical media release followed on February 28, 2023 with comprehensive options including Ultra HD Blu-ray, and DVD formats. This multi-format approach acknowledged different consumer technology preferences while ensuring that the film's visual achievements could be experienced at various quality levels. The Ultra HD Blu-ray format particularly showcased the film's distinctive animation style and technical achievements, providing the highest quality home viewing experience available. A special collector's edition was released digitally on February 21st, 2023, 1 week before the physical media release, providing additional content that enhanced the film's value proposition for dedicated fans. This collector's approach included bonus features, behind-the-scenes content, and exclusive materials that provided deeper insight into the film's creation while justifying premium pricing for committed audiences. The physical media release included Puss in Boots: The Trident, a 4-minute CGI animated short film that expanded the franchise universe while providing additional value for home media purchasers. This short featured Derek Bowser reprising his role as Puss from The Adventures of Puss in Boots television series, creating continuity with other franchise properties while providing exclusive content that encouraged physical media sales over digital rentals. Streaming availability reflected the complex landscape of contemporary content distribution with multiple platform agreements that serve different strategic purposes while maximizing long-term revenue potential. The film became available on Universal's Peacock streaming service on March 10, 2023, providing accessible viewing for subscription customers while supporting the parent company's streaming platform development. The streaming distribution strategy included an 18-month deal with Netflix that reflected the evolving relationships between theatrical releases and streaming availability. Under this agreement, the film streamed on Peacock for the first 4 months of the pay TV window before moving to Netflix for 10 months, beginning July 13, 2023. And finally returning to PAC for the remaining 4 months, starting in May 2024. This complex arrangement balanced different platform strategies while ensuring sustained availability across the most popular streaming services. Home media performance included $7 million in home sales, demonstrating continued commercial appeal beyond theatrical and streaming revenue. These sales reflected both collector interest and consumer preference for ownership over subscription access, particularly for family-oriented content that benefits from repeat viewing. The home sales performance supported the film's overall financial success, while indicating strong audience satisfaction that could support future franchise development. Bonus content included in various home media formats provided extensive behind-the-scenes material that enhanced understanding of the film's creative development. These features included director commentary, making of documentaries, character development, insights and technical explanations of the innovative animation approaches used throughout the production. Such bonus content served both entertainment and educational purposes while adding value that justified premium pricing over streaming alternatives. International home media releases were coordinated across multiple markets with appropriate localization for different regional preferences and technical standards. This global approach ensured consistent availability, while acknowledging different consumer behaviors and market conditions that influenced purchasing decisions in various territories. The comprehensive home media strategy reflected industry recognition that successful animated films benefit from extended availability across multiple formats and platforms. By providing options for different consumer preferences and viewing patterns, the release strategy maximized both immediate revenue and long-term franchise value while ensuring that the film remained accessible to audiences, regardless of their preferred viewing method. Reception box office: Puss in Boots. The Last Wish achieved remarkable commercial success that exceeded initial industry expectations, ultimately grossing $485.3 million worldwide against a production budget estimated between $191.10 million. This financial performance positioned the film as the 10th highest-grossing film of 2022 globally, while generating a calculated net profit of $120.2 million according to Deadline, Hollywood's analysis that accounted for production costs, marketing expenses, talent participations, and various distribution costs offset against box office revenues and home media sales. The film's commercial trajectory proved particularly notable for its unusual pattern of sustained and growing audience interest, rather than the typical front-loaded performance characteristic of most theatrical releases. This pattern, which industry analysts attributed to positive word of mouth, strong critical reception, and minimal competition from other family-oriented content, eventually led to the film being classified as a sleeper hit by March 2023. Domestic box office performance totaled $186.1 million in the United States and Canada, representing a strong showing that reflected both franchise loyalty and positive audience reception to the film's evolved approach. The domestic performance proved particularly impressive given the film's opening weekend results, which initially appeared below industry projections, but ultimately demonstrated remarkable staying power throughout its theatrical run. International box office contributed $299.2 million from territories outside the United States and Canada, demonstrating the franchise's global appeal while indicating successful international marketing and distribution strategies. The strong international performance reflected both the universal appeal of the story's themes and the effectiveness of localized marketing approaches that connected with diverse global audiences. Opening weekend performance in the United States and Canada generated $12.4 million from 4,099 theaters during the three-day weekend, with total earnings reaching an estimated $26.2 million over the six-day Christmas holiday period. While these initial numbers fell below industry projections of $530 million for the five-day opening, several external factors influenced their results, including Winter Storm Elliott and concerns about a potential triple mix surge in CO-19 and influenza cases that may have reduced theater attendance during the holiday period. Despite opening behind holdover title Avatar: The Way of Water, industry analysts and Universal's president of domestic distribution, Jim Orr, expressed confidence that the film could gain momentum through positive word of mouth and the extended holiday school break that traditionally benefits family entertainment. This optimism proved justified as subsequent weekend performance demonstrated unusual growth patterns that contradicted typical box office decline trajectories. Second, weekend performance showed remarkable growth, with the film earning $16.8, representing a 35% increase from its debut weekend. This unusual pattern of audience growth rather than decline reflected positive critical reception and word of mouth. Recommendations that continued to drive new audience engagement well after the initial release. Excitement had subsided. Third weekend performance demonstrated continued strength with $13.5 million in earnings despite a 19% decline, which represented the first non-H holiday weekend in the film's run. Even this decline remained relatively modest compared to typical animated film performance patterns, indicating sustained audience interest that supported continued theatrical presence across the country. The film achieved a significant milestone during its fourth weekend, earning $14.5 million while crossing the $100 million mark at the United States and Canadian box office. The Martin Luther King Jr. weekend four-day period generated $18.9 million from Friday through Monday, demonstrating continued appeal during another holiday period that benefited family entertainment consumption patterns. The film ultimately completed its domestic theatrical run on April 20th, 2023, after maintaining theatrical presence for nearly 4 months. This extended run reflected both sustained audience interest and theater operator confidence in the film's continued commercial viability. Unusual characteristics for animated releases that typically see more rapid transitions to home viewing platforms. Box office analysis revealed several factors that contributed to the film's success beyond simple franchise recognition. The positive critical reception with a 95% rating on Rotten Tomatoes provided credibility that supported audience decision-making while generating media coverage that extended promotional reach beyond traditional marketing campaigns. The film's mature thematic content attracted adult audiences while maintaining appeal for younger viewers, expanding the potential audience base beyond typical animated film demographics. The competitive landscape during the film's release proved relatively favorable for sustained performance, with limited family-oriented competition that allowed The Last Wish to capture holiday audience attention for extended periods. This competitive advantage, combined with positive audience reception, created conditions that supported the unusual box office growth pattern that characterized the film's commercial trajectory. International markets contributed significantly to the overall commercial success, with particular strength in territories where previous franchise entries had performed well. The film's universal themes about mortality, family, and personal growth translated effectively across cultural boundaries. While the high-quality animation and voice performance work maintain entertainment value regardless of localization approaches, the film status as 8th on Deadline Hollywood's list of 2022's most valuable blockbusters reflected not only gross revenue success, but also efficient cost management and revenue optimization across multiple distribution channels. This ranking acknowledged both theatrical success and ancillary revenue generation that maximized the overall financial return on the production investment. Critical response: Puss in Boots. The Last Wish received widespread critical acclaim that exceeded expectations for a franchise sequel, earning praise for its sophisticated animation, mature storytelling, and outstanding voice performances. The critical reception proved instrumental in the film's commercial success, while establishing credibility that supported positive word of mouth and sustained audience interest throughout its theatrical run. Rotten Tomatoes aggregated 192 critics' reviews, with 95% receiving positive ratings and an average score of 7/6/10. The website's critical consensus stated, arriving more than a decade after the previous installment, the smart, sweet, and funny Puss in Boots, The Last Wish, proves some franchises only get better with age. This consensus reflected critics' appreciation for the film's evolution beyond simple franchise continuation toward genuine artistic achievement and thematic depth. Metacritic assigned the film a score of 73 out of 100 based on 29 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews according to their weighted average system. This score positioned the film well above the typical range for animated sequels, while reflecting critical recognition of the production's artistic and narrative achievements. The Metacritic score provided additional validation for the film's quality, while supporting its credibility with adult audiences who often consult critical aggregation sites when making viewing decisions. Audience reception proved equally positive, with CinemaScore reporting an average grade of A on their A+ to F scale based on opening weekend surveys. Post-track data showed 89% of audience members providing positive scores, indicating strong satisfaction levels that supported a positive word of mouth that drove the film's sustained box office performance. These audience metrics demonstrated that the film successfully satisfied both critical expectations and popular entertainment preferences. IGN's Raphael Motor provided one of the most enthusiastic reviews, awarding the film 9 out of 10 points while writing Puss in Boots. The Last Wish mixes stunning animation with a poignant, surprisingly mature story to deliver the Shrek franchise's answer to Logan. We didn't know we needed. This comparison to the critically acclaimed superhero film, Logan, reflected critics' appreciation for the film's willingness to explore mature themes about mortality and legacy while maintaining entertainment value appropriate for family audiences. Christy Layer of Roger.com offered a more measured but still positive assessment, acknowledging that after a roaring start, the film sags a bit in the midsection as it becomes clear that we're in for a pretty standard quest. However, she praised the film's ability to convey messages of selflessness and teamwork in a way that doesn't feel heavy-handed or clawing. While commending both voice performances and visual design, Layer's review reflected critical recognition that the film succeeded in balancing entertainment with meaningful thematic content. Nate Richard of Collider awarded the film a grad writing, "Nothing in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish feels lazy. It more than justifies the long wait. It is not only one of the best animated films of the year, but it's one of DreamWorks' best and one that will strike a chord with moviegoers of all ages." Richard's review emphasized the film's broad appeal while positioning it within DreamWorks Animation's historical output, suggesting that the studio had returned to form after a period of less successful releases. Peter DeBora of Variety provided particularly significant validation by declaring the film DWA's best film since the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy. This comparison to DreamWorks' most critically acclaimed recent work reflected recognition that The Last Wish represented a creative high point for the studio, while suggesting sustained artistic achievement rather than isolated success. Mixon's Vincent of Loud and Clear awarded the film 4 out of 5 stars, writing, "Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is finally giving me hope that the Shrek franchise may not be dead yet." Vincent's review reflected broader critical sentiment about franchise revitalization, with many critics noting that the film demonstrated how established properties could evolve meaningfully rather than simply repeating previous successes. Emma Stefanski of VindeWire praised the film's willingness to challenge audience expectations, enjoying the fact that the film has no qualms about testing the expectations of its young audience, while delivering a freewheeling tale about appreciating the 9 lives we already have. This critical perspective acknowledged the film's sophisticated approach to family entertainment, while recognizing its thematic ambitions. Frank Sheik of The Hollywood Reporter found the film darker in tone, but still extremely funny, though noting it falters when resorting to the frenetic action sequences seemingly designed for Tyke's short attention spans. Despite these reservations, Sheck praised Antonio Banderas' voice work specifically, stating that Banderas, on the other hand, is worth every penny in comparison to other animated films that feature supremely overpaid and overqualified voice casts whom children and most adults couldn't care less about. William Babani of The Wrap provided one of the few mixed reviews, summarizing that there are comic moments that land and action set pieces that pop, but the overwhelming sensation here is a meditation on the inevitability of death. While Bibian's review acknowledged the film's technical achievements, his perspective reflected some critical concern that the mature themes might overwhelm the entertainment value expected from family-oriented animated content. The critical response particularly praised the film's animation style, which drew inspiration from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse to create a distinctive, painterly aesthetic that differentiated the sequel from previous franchise entries. Critics noted how this visual approach supported the story's fairy tale elements while providing spectacular action sequences that maintain narrative coherence rather than mere spectacle. Many reviews emphasized the film's thematic sophistication, particularly its treatment of mortality and personal growth themes that elevated the content beyond typical animated sequel expectations. Critics appreciated how the story used Puss's confrontation with death as a vehicle for exploring genuine philosophical questions about meaning, legacy, and the value of finite existence. The voice performances received widespread critical praise, with particular attention to Antonio Banderas' continued excellence in the title role and Wagner Moa's menacing yet nuanced portrayal of death. Critics noted how the cast brought genuine emotional depth to their characters, while maintaining the comedic timing that defined the franchise's appeal. Critical discussion frequently focused on the film's successful balance between mature themes and family-appropriate content, with reviewers praising the creative team's ability to explore complex emotional territory without becoming inappropriate for younger audiences. This balance reflected sophisticated storytelling that respected audience intelligence while maintaining broad accessibility. The film's treatment of anxiety and Mental health, particularly Puss's panic attack sequence, received specific critical attention for its authentic and sensitive portrayal. Critics praised the filmmaker's commitment to accurate representation, while noting how those elements contributed to the story's emotional authenticity. In December 2024, Kalita ranked the film at number 3 on its list of the 10 best fantasy movies of the 2020s, with Robert Lee rewriting easily one of the most acclaimed and exceptional movies to come from DreamWorks Animation in years. Puss and Boots: The Last Wish revitalized the long-since Storm and Shrek franchise as if it had never left. This retrospective recognition demonstrated the film's lasting critical impact and its position within contemporary animated cinema. The overall critical response established Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is a significant achievement in contemporary animation, with reviewers consistently praising its artistic ambitions, technical excellence, and thematic depth. The positive reception contributed significantly to the film's commercial success, while establishing credibility that supported award recognition and cultural discussion about the potential for animated entertainment to address sophisticated themes while maintaining broad appeal. Critics' appreciation for the film extended beyond simple franchise evaluation to recognition of genuine artistic achievement, with many reviews positioning the work within broader discussions about animation's potential as a storytelling medium. This critical perspective reflected the film's success in transcending genre expectations while achieving both popular and artistic success. Review and facts number 1. Hey kids, want to see a movie revolving around an aging male character dealing with a midlife crisis who's desperately afraid of his impending mortality? Just in time for Christmas? Not so much. Didn't think so. Now, what if I told you that it was a Puss in Boots movie? Release date, Wednesday, December 21st. Cast: Antonio Banderas, Salo Epinal, Olivia Colman, Harvey Guillen, Samson Coe, Anthony Mendes, Wagner Moura, John, Melanie, Florence Pugh, Diavine, Roy Randolph, Ray Winstone. Director Joel Crawford. Screenwriters Paul Fisher, Tommy Swirlo. Rated PG, 1 hour 40 minutes. It's been nearly 2 decades since the adorable Puss made his screen debut in Shrek 2, and 11 years since his starring debut, and he's worse for the wear. In an elaborate action sequence that opens his new animated adventure, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, he gets killed that normally wouldn't be a problem for a cat with 9 lives. Except that Puss has now lost 8 of them. Naturally, that prompts a visit to his concerned physician, Anthony Mendes, who advises him to adopt some lifestyle changes like retiring and not dying anymore. He almost attempts to take Puss's temperature, and not orally. The feline naturally demurs, assuring his doctor, "Trust me, I run hot." Puss Antonio Banderas has a more immediate solution to his problem. With the help of his former girlfriend and occasional foil kitty soft pose Salo Epinal also reprising her role, he heads into the Black Forest in search of the mythical wishing star that he hopes will restore his squandered lives. If you're wondering how he lost so many, screenwriters Paul Fisher and Tommy Swirl vividly illustrate the causes of his many demises in a hilarious montage that illustrates the frequent wit on display in DreamWorks Animation offerings. Not all of those deaths are heroic, as demonstrated by his gluttonous losing battle with a shellfish allergy. Puss and Kitty head into the forest accompanied by Perito, Harvey Guillen, a mangy, aspiring therapy dog whom Puss meets when he takes temporary refuge in the populated home of an obsessed cat lover, Diavine Joy Randolph. Many adventures ensue with the trio forced to contend with such nefarious characters as a teenage Goldilocks Florence Pugh gone bad, a very mature, oversized Jack or John Melanie who, through the magic of engineering, sounds big here. Now, N-World Kingpin in a crime family consisting of Mama Bear Olivia Colman, Papa Bear Ray Winston, and the not-at-all diminutive Baby Bear Samson Coe. Meanwhile, Puss's is being pursued by the fearsome bounty hunter wolf Wagner Moura, a visual personification of the mortality that haunts him. Darker in tone, but still extremely funny, the film, like so many of its animated brethren, falters when resorting to the frenetic action sequences seemingly designed for Tyke's short attention spans. Those exhausting episodes pale in comparison to such uproarious scenes as a saucer-eyed feline face-off in which Puss attempts to prove he's the most adorable. Also highly amusing are the scenes involving the tiny Ginny Cricket-inspired Deathbug who fruitlessly attempts to serve as Jack, her conscience. He's voiced by DreamWorks Animation story supervisor Kevin McCann, doing a fun riff on Jimmy Stewart, making frequent if occasionally overdone allusions to Sergio Leone's Spaghetti. Westerns the film, directed by Joel Crawford, The Crud's a new age, Bose, painterly animation style that feels richer than the usual computer graphics. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish looks great. But what really makes it work is Bandor's silky voice turn conveying all of the characters' over-the-top feline suavity while making it clear that he's very much in on the joke. Too often animated films feature supremely overpaid and overqualified voice casts whom children and most adults couldn't care less about. Banderas, on the other hand, is worth every penny. Number 2. In the current climate of Hollywood, in which the maintenance of intellectual property rights often takes precedence over innovation, artistry, or even simple entertainment value, few prospects could seem dimmer than a belated sequel to a spin-off of the Shrek franchise. And yet, director Joel Crawford's Puss in Boots: The Last Wish defies the odds, vaulting over not only the low expectations that the wary film-go might have set for it, but achieving something all too rare in the realm of children's animated features. Genuine delight, a pleasantly overstaid shaggy dog tale that moves at a breakneck pace. The Last Wish opens with a rip-roaring swashbuckling musical sequence that evokes the hammy hyper-masculinity of Vincent Minnelli's The Pirate. The dauntless Puss in Boots, voiced by Antonio Banderas, leads a sing-along ode to his own greatness before slaying a fearsome answer. But just as it seems Puss can do no wrong, he gets conked in the face by Belle and falls to his demise. This death, the swaggering feline's aid, causes P to face up to his mortality, at least for a little while. In the film's funniest sequence, he lies low in an populated shelter run by a kooky cat lady named Mama Luna Diab Joy Randolph, where he grows a retirement beard and is forced to queue up to use the house's shared litter box, where dignity goes to die. Eventually, though, Puss catches wind of a mythical wishing star, which he hopes will allow him to replenish his lost lives. So he teams up with the chipper young pup Harvey Gill, the copyright N and his old flame kitty soft pick on a quest to find this mythical talisman, largely is chewing the more realistic 3D animation style of the Shrek films. The Last Wish opts for a painterly storybook look that suits its mock fairy tale narrative. Crawford's film bears the traces of its lengthy production history, during which Guillermo Del and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse co-director Bob Persetti were both attached to direct. The Last Wish's action sequences employ the herky-jerky, wham-bam-pow comic book style of Spider-Verse, while some of its character designs, such as the grotesquely ill-proportioned villain Big Jack, her John Melanie, and a crimsoned lupine bounty hunter who looks like a cross between the Seventh Seal's Death and the Space Coyote from Homer Simpson's chili-induced hallucination, bear the apparent influence of Deltau's imagination. The film happily metabolizes a wide range of inspirations, everything from the Devil Mayare adventure films of Errol Flynn to Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns to Apocalypse. Now, while there may be nothing particularly new in any of the Last Wish's reference points and parodies, the Looney Tunes-like joy with which they're delivered is nevertheless infectious. With its multiple antagonists, constant scene hopping, and rapid-fire action set pieces, The Last Wish is certainly busy. An attempt to wring pathos out of a subplot involving Goldilocks, Florence Pugh and the Three Bears, Ray Winstone, Olivia Colman, and Samson Coe, in which they're imagined as a cocky crime family, feels particularly strayed. But there's so many witty throwaway gags, so much texture and detail in the film's visual palette, and such exuberance in the performance as a band in particular seems to be having a blast tweaking his brooding leather person. Hey, it's hard to care too much, and given that big studio children's animation so often feels like it was created by algorithm, it's refreshing to see a kid's cartoon like The Last Wish that's filled with too many ideas rather than too few. Scorecast Antonio? Banduras, Sal Harvey Gillard, the DeCopyright and Florence Pugh, Olivia Colman. Ray Winstone, Samson Coe, John Melanie, Wagner Mora, Diavon Joy, Randolph Anthony. Mendy's director Joel Crawford, screenwriter Paul Pfizer, Tommy Swirlau. Distributor Universal Pictures, running time 102 minutes, rating PG, year 2022. Video soundtrack. If you can, please consider supporting Slant Magazine. Since 2001, we've brought you Uncompromising. Canada takes on the world of film, music, television, video games, theater, and more. Independently owned and operated publications like Slant have been hit hard in recent years, but we're committed to keeping our content free and accessibly, meaning no paywalls or fees. If you like what we do, please consider subscribing to our Patreon or making a donation. Number 3. Synopsis. A Puss in Boots discovers that his passion for adventure has taken its toll. He has burned through 8 of his 9 lives. Puss sets out on an epic journey to find the mythical last wish and restore his 9 lives. Might take it for about a decade. The Shrek franchise undoubtedly dominated the box office, and at the time was the only animated juggernaut franchise which took on the Disney Pixar series of films. Despite comparatively diminishing returns in quality, something which visibly sat in with Shrek 3 2007 and Shrek Forever After 2010, and no one would have thought that the franchise was dead in the water, at least feature film-wise. Following the release of its spin-off Puss in Boots 2011, an exceedingly ugly and unfunny romp that is best left as a forgotten footnote of DreamWorks' excellent animated output. 11. Years later, the sassy Spanish feline, voiced by Antonio Banderas, has surprisingly returned for another fairy tail-busting adventure after being stuck in development, held following the release of the latter. However, the bigger surprise is how the sequel significantly improves upon its predecessor with spectacular animation and a plot worthy of the franchise. Directed by Joel Crawford and Janu Mercado and written by Paul Fisher, Tommy Swirlau, and Tom Wheeler, the film succeeds in bringing back the familiar yet exciting chaotic energy last seen in Shrek 2 2004, as it throws in a new set of familiar nursery rhymes and beloved children's fables to entertaining ends. While the film is strung around by dynamic animation and lively voice work, its biggest win comes in the form of bravely approaching the topic of death while still delivering wonderful scenes of slapstick, resulting in an exciting and highly amusing effort for both children and adults with gorgeous visuals that pop out of the screen, animation that blends 3D and 2D in exhilarating ways to deliver thrilling action scenes and a poignant yet life-affirming story. This sequel is without a doubt one of the best animated films of the year and a great return to form for the franchise. The story follows Puss in Boots, voiced by Antonio Banderas, a cat fugitive from the law, and a popular folk hero of Sandy, Ricardo, who all these years has been reveling in his legendary status, believing he is invincible. But when he is killed by a freak accident with a church bell, following his latest conquest of a giant monster, Puss is made to realize by a doctor, voiced by Anthony Mendes, that he has already spent 8 of his 9 lives and that the current one is his last. At first, he does not think much of it, but after a traumatic encounter with a threatening and dominous bounty-hunting wolf, voiced by Wagner Mora, pushed aside to retire from his adventures, retreating into a bearded and depressing life of a spoiled, lazy lap cat for elderly cat lady Mama. Luna, voiced by Diavon Joy Randolph, Puss even attracts the unwanted friendship of a therapy support dog. Perito, voiced by Harvey Gill, copyright N. However, this seclusion does not prevent the Three Bears crime family, voiced by Ray Winstone, Olivia Colman, and Samson Co., led by Goldilocks, voiced by Florence Pugh, from tracking Puss down, with the hopes of recruiting him for a job to hunt down the map to a lost wishing star. Puss, of course, sees this as an opportunity to wish his lost lives back into existence and joins a race which reunites him with his love interest, Kitty Soft P, voiced by Sam Moik, and sets him against the magically gluttonous Jack, her voiced by John Melanie, both of whom have their own agendas for finding the star. Yes, this makes for an admittedly busy narrative in terms of characters and motivations, but the film is able to keep up with all its players with exceptional pacing, both in terms of story and action, aiming to give Puss some real stakes as he faces his final life. Humor is successful and heart hits as it should, with Perito hoping to inspire team friendship as action heats up for Puss and Kitty. The fact that it doesn't overstay its welcome at a brisk 102 minutes helps too. In true Shrek fashion, the film plays with fairy tale characters you may recognize, but uniquely twisted ways, with the best one being a small role for Ginny Cricket from Pinocchio, who tries to be the bad guy's conscience, but fails miserably at convincing him to not just murder people. There are also swashbuckling fight scenes that swash and or buckle rather well. However, everything is in the service of a rather mature and complex story about facing death and embracing life as it follows an adventurer at the tail end of his life with themes about confronting death and reckoning with some hard truths. The film does remarkably well with the heroes and their various issues, finding Puss confronting his mortality, also handling unresolved issues with Kitty, trying to make up for his past cruelty. But it's not all doom and gloom, as the story comes off as rather life-affirming, with an uplifting message about embracing every day like it's your last. The writing also pulls off a minor miracle by offering so many antagonists, yet it never feels cluttered or distracted, with each menace provided screen time to explore motivations. The most obvious upgrade from the previous film is in the animation, which takes inspiration from DreamWorks' own Success story and the bad guys. The combination of 2D and 3D animation meshes well with the painterly storybook aesthetic that the film is obviously aiming for, allowing one to soak in beautiful vistas in the quiet moments and seamlessly ramping up into frenetic action. Voice. Performance-wise, Antonio Banderas continues to carry the bravado, arrogance, and charisma of Puss, whom we've known and loved since he made his first appearance in Shrek 2, 2004. He also shares great chemistry with Selma Hick, who brings her own sexy impotence to the voice of the skillful thief Kitty in supporting turns. Florence Pugh, Harvey Gillel, the copyright N. Wagner, Mora, Olivia Colman, Ray Winstone, John Melanie, Diavon Joy Randolph, Anthony Mendez, and Samson Co. bring their own range of excellence to their roles. On the whole, A Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is a very amusing, engaging, and visually striking animated sequel that is not only gorgeous, but also the second best feature of the franchise. Number 4, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish hits theaters on December 21st, 2022. Review by Raphael Motor. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish takes not only the Shrek franchise, but DreamWorks Animation to exciting new places. This is a spaghetti western-inspired tale of an aging cowboy on one last adventure with some rather mature themes, aided by stunning animation that mixes 3D with 2D effects and a painterly style that gives the film a unique look. Number 5, fearless feline hero Puss in Boots. Banderas realizes his 9 lives have nearly run out. Cue a quest to a enchanted forest with Kitty Soft P and Strangewa. Paragil the copyright into unear a wishing star that could offer him the chance to earn his lives back. You'd be forgiven for thinking that the Shrek franchise was on its last life by now, while the 2001 original and its even funnier 2004 sequel shook up the status quo with their sharp Disney fairy tale. Satire diminishing returns saw the anarchic ogre's impact dwindle over time. It's fair to say then that Puss and Boots: The Last Wish, a sequel to a spin-off that graced cinema screens over a decade ago, 8 doesn't arrive with much momentum behind it, that it frequently explodes into sequences of vital, visually dazzling. Capitol Cinema is a truly unexpected delight. In its opening 15 minutes, it's clear that The Last Wish is fighting tooth and claw to exceed expectations. Kicking off with a kinetic Kitty vs. Khajiit piece that reestablishes the legendary status of Puss in Boots for an audience who have likely long moved on. Antonio Banderas, who originated the role way back in Shrek 2, returns to voice the Zorro-styled, lech-lapping swashbuckler, whose diminutive stature belies feats of high war heroism, taking on a moss-covered mountain beast with only his rapier. It's an eye-boggling, pulse-pounding sequence, gorgeously animated and striking digital paintbrush strokes, and intentionally stuttering Spider-Verse-esque frame rate effects. With stakes this high, notions this existential, and a superhero this hairy, it often plays like a kid-friendly Logan. The effect is dazzling. Once again, it's apparent that Spider-Verse has upped the game of every animation studio in town. The Last Wish capitalizes on that with visual flourishes that bring real dynamism to its action scenes, breaking away from the homogeneous stylings of late Zeros. 3D animation to deliver ultra-expressive impressionistic imagery. That boundary pushing extends to the themes explored here. 2. If younger viewers won't necessarily be familiar with Puss in Boots himself, they also likely won't be expecting a treatise on mortality and PTSD. But that's The Last Wish's central preoccupation as Puss realizes his 9 lives have dwindled down to 1, kept off in a hilarious, muggy murder montage, and that death itself is rapidly approaching. With stakes this high, notions this existential, and a superhero this hairy, it often plays like a kid-friendly Logan. Everything exceptional about The Last Wish makes the more generic elements stand out, such as the supporting characters, some of which don't quite sing. The gangster, family Goldilocks, Florence Pugh, and the 3 Bears. Ray Winstone, Olivia, Coleman, and Samson Coe ring few laughs, while villain Jack or John Melanie also feels like a distraction. But in most regards, The Last Wish is a minor miracle. A visually daring, frequently funny, and surprisingly emotional. Against all the odds, it could bring the Shrek series back to all-star status. Cat always lands on its feet. And Puss in Boots. The Last Wish does so with considerable style, rapier wit, and surprising substance. The sequel nobody saw coming just became must-see cinematic spectacle. Number 6. I will admit I did not want to see Puss in Boots: The Last Wish initially. I don't remember any DreamWorks films like Shrek or the other Puss in Boots being a big part of my childhood, but it does not matter for this movie. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is one of the best animated movies I have seen in a very long time. The stop-motion and almost comic book-like depictions of fights just enhance an already beautiful story. I had no context walking into the film, but the flashbacks perfectly complemented every scene, and I felt I was not missing anything essential from previous films. The saturated colors highlight already enchanting scenes, something I did not expect from a DreamWorks film. I think that is one of the things that makes this film so amazing. Nobody expected a jaw-dropping film with beautiful cinematography, which was not discussed until after it came out. Suddenly, reviews of a stunning film rocked the entertainment industry. Puss in Boots. The Last Wish is not a movie I would usually watch, but every news outlet had an excellent review, and every social media I had was talking about it, so I knew I had to see it. The film was paced perfectly, and I never felt bored. It was arranged into chapters, something I enjoyed as you knew the direction of the scene by the title of every chapter. However, one of the most stunning aspects of this film is the villain, Death. He is one of the scariest villains DreamWorks has ever created, with an aura of fear surrounding him, at the only one to make Puss in Boots afraid enough to run away. From a fight, he is depicted as a wolf with red eyes, a huge and looming creature that no one has supposedly ever defeated. For a lot of the film, DreamWorks does not reveal to the viewer whether or not Death is a physical embodiment of Puss in Boots' anxiety about death, or if he is a real being that everyone can see. Since all of their initial interactions are done in private, these interactions highlight the horror of Death as a villain, because he always attacks when Puss in Boots' guard is down, like when he's at the bar. After losing his sword and after discovering a tomb of his arrogant past lives. However, Death does not take advantage of these encounters and often gives Puss a second chance or kicks him over his sword. This makes him even more startling. There are times I was genuinely worried that Puss in Boots would die since Death seemed so overpowered. During these meetings with Death, Puss is also battling multiple other fairy tale villains that are after the last wish of a wishing star, just adding to the anticipation of the finale. I love that DreamWorks captured Puss in Boots' fear every time he encountered Death with the hairs on his neck standing up, a terrifying soundtrack, and even showing blood dripping down his forehead at one point. The animators are also able to capture one of the most realistic depictions of a panic attack I have ever seen in a film. A shocking feat for an animated DreamWorks film. Puss in Boots is trying to overcome more than death, though after becoming aware he wasted his first 8 lives, he now has to come to terms with the fact that he is on his last life until he discovers a whimsical map that can save him. This map shows a long and dangerous journey to the wishing star, which will allow a single person to grant one new wish. On this journey, he reconnects with a former love kitty Soft P and meets an unlikely companion as Silly Dog, who is the opposite of Puss. Throughout the film, the audience grows to love this little mutt who has experienced more hardship than all the other characters, but remains a source of comedy and joy. This unnamed friend has a dream of becoming a therapy dog, something Puss originally laughs at until the dog is able to calm Puss down from a panic attack. Puss and Kitty lovingly nickname their unlikely companion Perito, which is only one of many cute moments that makes one love the little dog. In his last life, Puss in Boots struggles to overcome his arrogance and learns to defeat his past self, the confident hero who is not afraid of anything, let alone something as silly as death. He grows as a character and slowly falls in love with his long-lost companion, Kitty. The voice actors did a phenomenal job, and I laughed hysterically multiple times throughout the film. John Melanie portrays a hilarious supervillain with no redemption arc, and the honorable Cricket on his shoulder who tries to point him in the right direction is left dumbfounded. Antonio Bander was the perfect voice actor for Puss in Boots, capturing the ideal comedic value and sultry tone for the fearless hero. The plot was interesting and well throughout, with amazing catches. One of my favorite parts of the film is how the map to the wishing star would change every time someone new touched it and showed a reflection of themselves. Puss and Kitty getting terrible paths of lava and fire-infused forests were later hilariously juxtaposed with Poirot's course of smelling roses and rainbows. I love how this is a story within a dozen stories, and I am sure if I watched it a few more times I could find a new Easter egg. Every time. Goldilocks and the Three Bears make multiple appearances and tasteful references to their fairy tale. There are so many characters to get involved with, but not too many that it is overwhelming. Overall, in traditional DreamWorks fashion, the film has a heartwarming finish. Puss finally realizes that he should not have wasted his first 8 lives so meaninglessly, and he will live his last one to the fullest. If I had one complaint about the movie, I wish it had been longer so I could have watched even more of the story unfold. Watching Puss become a better version of himself after seeing countless depictions of his arrogance in other films was exciting, something I was not expecting, and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting. And if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.